Welcome to Issues with Cartoons, the show that discusses comics and cartoons. I am Kyle.
And I'm Carl.
And today is episode 18 of Avengers Earth's Mightiest Hero Part 2 of the Kang saga that we are embroiled in. Written by Eugene Sun and directed by Vinton Heck. And this is the continuation of what we had started last episode, featuring Kang the Conqueror, where Kang is going to bring the fight to Earth.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this intro is. It's Kang's UFOs arrive, his fleet, if you will, arrive, and they start bombing New York. And, and Kang observes from his ship, just like Darth Vader bombing Hoth or something.
Honestly, that's a good comparison. I mean, there's some parallel with Kang and Vader, and I mean that Vader's,
a little bit.
Vader's basically Doctor Doom, but like Kang is also basically Doctor Doom. So they're all kind of.
When you show up in a spaceship and you start bombing stuff the way Kang did,
you're like hanging in orbit, watching your minions. Like, You know what this reminded me of actually in parts was a lot of Avengers 2012, like the film, the Avengers movie.
Yeah, MCU.
Yeah. One thing that I noticed too throughout this episode was there was a lot of attention paid to civilians and like the impact of these threats on civilians. I feel like a lot of the conflict has been superheroes and supervillains, and like just your bystanders haven't really been featured very heavily. But like I think that might have been what called Avengers 2012 to mind, is that it was just a lot of like people running in the streets away from these giant time-traveling robots, and a lot of people being kind of put in peril. And
I feel like when shows do that and they show like the crowd reacting, it gives it more stakes.
Yeah, it does.
Than when like they just show shots of the aliens blowing stuff up and you don't show me the people getting affected by it. Like I'm gonna feel
you might as well
less.
just be playing with action figures. Like
right.
It makes it more. And I think it was Mark Waid maybe who said something about how like if you take the human peril, like the stakes, out of it, then you're reducing the story. Like you're not making it about anything more than just cartoon characters fighting. Like this is actually like people are involved, and this is why heroes exist, is to protect people. And I really like that.
We haven't seen this much of like kind of the world at stake since like Gamma World probably.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah, because the last, like you said, the last one was just kind of like Masters of Evil versus Avengers.
Yeah, or even like the Kree Sentry wasn't really involved with like any of the civilians or anything like that. Like it's pretty much just a bunch of superheroes fighting a robot. But here we have like civilians involved. S.H.I.E.L.D. is being overwhelmed. Like no one's really able to reduce or mitigate the conflict. It's just kind of becoming harder and harder.
I like that where Fury showed up in the helicarrier.
I do too.
And stuff. I thought that was a cool cameo.
It's nice to bring him back into the fold.
Yeah, show that he's still operating in the universe and stuff.
So the Avengers are kind of getting involved on the ground. And this is, I mentioned last episode that we kind of get references to Rama-Tut, even if it's maybe not explicit. But Black Panther notes that the robots probably aren't alien robots. They might be earthbound because they have Egyptian stylings, which I think is the most reference we get to Rama-Tut thus far.
Yeah,
in this series.
In Rama-Tut being the earlier iteration of Kang.
Correct.
So like that's the biggest callback. Did we need that though? Did we need to muddy the waters with that? I had the thought. After they mentioned it, I'm like, we could have just kept Kang as the space conqueror. I'm not sure somebody just coming into this cartoon that doesn't know the Marvel lore would even get that.
Right.
Like a random, like if it was just some kid that's never read a Marvel comic and they're watching this show, like they're not going to get that reference. But the older fans definitely do.
It's an Easter egg for sure, and I to your point, it's probably not necessary. The argument I would make is it does clue the Avengers into the fact that it's not an alien. It's a time traveler.
He's from the future.
It's an Earth-born future person.
Yeah.
And it does kind of give some flavor to like this time traveler pulling from other eras to embellish his future tech. But I mean, you're right. I don't think though it's so distracting that it diminishes Kang or makes it confusing for the audience. You know, there's a way to present it where it could have been very convoluted and unnecessary, but I don't think that does it here.
Before that Egyptian reference, we find out these robots can self-repair. Like, a lot of this episode is spent, like, the Avengers fighting these robots, and then every single robot they kill on screen repairs itself. And so there's this thread of kind of like, what are we going to do? We're not actually creating any damage here. These robots can sustain themselves.
The way they set up the stakes in this episode, not just with civilians, but with the self-repairing robots and just the kind of deluge of threats, really effective. And when we talk in the second half of this episode about the comic, the stakes of this episode do remind me a lot of the stakes that are set up in that book.
Now, Carl, there is a cameo in this episode that I think you're going to be excited about.
I perked up.
And
I rewound it. I had to rewatch it because I was like, is that? Yep.
Yep. Kyle, do you want to share with the audience what this cameo is after we find out the robots are from Egypt?
So listen, we get a lot of stuff happening. Like there's this big fight. We see Kang's giant holographic head. We see all this stuff. And then the Avengers start kind of looking at the fact that this is not just happening in New York. It's happening around the world. Mm-hmm. And it's happening in China.
Around the world.
In Egypt.
Around the world.
In Wakanda, which we'll talk about.
Around
and then, Carl, as we go around the world.
Around the world.
I'm so glad this is on recording. We go to England. And we freaking see Dane Whitman, the Black Knight. Fighting Kang's forces. And I looked it up.
Cool cameo.
I looked it up. The only animated adaptation of Dane Whitman, Black Knight.
I figured he would never be in that.
Right? I mean, he has not even been in Avengers Assembled. He's not even been in anything, Carl. This is it.
This
non-speaking cameo. It wouldn't be until 2021's Eternals movie with Kit Harington that Dane Whitman would see any adaptation again. Super exciting for me. And probably no one else. But
isn't he riding a dragon?
He's riding a winged horse.
Oh, okay.
Dragon wings.
Winged horse. Okay.
I forget the name of his horse, but
like a Valkyrie.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's
and
very, very
Black Knight's just one of those characters. We talked a lot about him when we covered Siege.
Yes, he's in Under Siege, very heavily featured in that.
He's a key character of that, and he's kind of calling back to Camelot, Merlin, and kind of that once and future king, you know,
the
like,
medieval Arthurian.
That's a great way. That's a better way of putting it. Legends and stuff, and I feel like he's one of those characters that it's like you have to be a big fan of the Avengers comics, like to even know who he is. Like casual people, I feel like casual people I talk to about Marvel don't know who Black Knight is.
I equate him to like the Shiny Knight on DC. So in like Justice League Unlimited, when characters like the Cowboy Vigilante would show up, or the Shiny Knight would show up. They would be like these anachronistic kind of aesthetic, interesting visuals that don't mean anything to me as someone who doesn't read those comics. But like I appreciate them as like, oh, that's like an interesting visual element. And you know, there are a lot of British characters they could have used, and they picked the Black Knight. And I love that they picked the Black Knight.
Chris Yost giving you those cameos you want.
Over and over.
And
Black Knight will play a part in the comic we read, the comics that we were talking about in the second half. Like
he just show up.
He's featured in a lot of Avengers stories, and some of them feature Kang. And I've always liked Dane Whitman. Black Knight as a character goes all the way back to the 50s. As far as a Marvel Comics character, there was an old Arthurian kind of Prince Valiant knockoff Black Knight book written by Stan Lee and drawn by Joe Maneely. And then Black Knight would be modernized as a villain for the Masters of Evil, and then Dane Whitman would come later. So he's been around. It's actually kind of crazy that he's only been adapted once. Like he's never had a cameo in literally anything. until this. So very exciting that he shows up.
Not even Spider-Man the animated series.
And that's what I was going to say. Like,
which had everybody.
Spider-Man the animated series had the Thunderer. It had the Black Marvel. It didn't. Black Knight didn't quite make it.
Yeah.
I think there was even stuff in the Spider-Man show that took place in England. But anyway.
One thing I liked about this episode is they continue the relationship of Hulk and Hawkeye. They're very buddy. In the last episode, they watched Iron Man and Cap fight in the training room. And they kind of continue that trend here. They have like a dialogue.
On the bridge together was a very cool sequence.
Yeah, they're buddies.
I love that. I love
buddies that fight together.
I love that part where Hawkeye was like, "What? Do you need to take a break? I'll go ahead and take. I'll take up from here." And then the giant robot shows up, and Hulk's like, "Yeah, I think I will take a break."
Yeah, Hulk took him literally and started walking away, which I loved.
Good.
Yeah,
So
he was just like, "I will take break."
I also liked. It reminded me of I recently rewatched the Lord of the Rings movies, and there's in the Two Towers, Legolas and Gimli have that contest of
who they had great dialogue,
and there's that. It reminded me of the scene of Thor and Hulk having that contest of who could beat up the most robots.
Yeah,
and it just felt very Gimli Legolas to me.
Yeah, and that was that was always funny.
Oh,
I love the rewatch those. I need to watch the extended cuts.
I do want to talk about the scene where when they're looking at the monitors and they see that the invasion's happening all around the world and it's happening in Wakanda, and Black Panther's been very quiet and he's just staring at the Wakanda screen. And Cap notices and he says, "You should go be with your people." And Iron Man gets a little pissy about it. And he says, "Cap, that's not your call to make. We need everyone we can get." And they just stare him down, and Tony's like, "Fine, you can go. We'll go help you when we can." And I only bring that up because this is another example of something that I've been kind of paying attention to since about Gamma World, which is the leader on paper is Tony. The leader in effect is Captain America. And
Always.
And to the point where like Tony makes the bad decisions, that Cap has to make the right decisions. Every time, over and over and over again. And Cap thinks of the people first and thinks of T'Challa and what he needs, and like they'll figure it out on their own without T'Challa. Like T'Challa needs to go take care of his stuff. Cap says, "We got you. Go ahead."
Tony is inherently selfish.
Over and over again, he proves that.
Yeah,
and he doesn't want to be.
He's trying to be better. He is very self-centered in thinking about his livelihood, whereas Cap often thinks about like the good of the team.
Yeah. So throughout all this, the odds are overwhelming. The possibility of victory seems slighter and slighter.
Yeah, it's not good, and Iron Man's connected to every satellite in the world.
And cannot find Kang anywhere on Earth.
Yeah, he's using that, which reminded me a lot of the device that Batman uses in Dark Knight.
Sure.
Where he's trying to find the Joker.
Yeah.
And he's connected to every computer.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called exactly, but everyone knows what I'm talking about, right?
Right.
You know, it's the device that Lucius Fox makes.
Right.
And he's like, "I've got to find this man, Lucius." You know.
Yeah.
That was a terrible Batman.
That was almost pitch perfect. Huh?
No, I needed more growl. We gotta find him. Yeah, there we go. That's better. That's a better now. Christian Bale.
But Cap looks at the landscape and looks at all these robots attacking Earth, and they manage to drive them away from New York, I think, by this point. But Cap says, "This is a war, and we need an army." And Wasp says, in a very pivotal moment, I think, for the series, she says, "I know where you can find an army." And she takes Captain America to Prison 42 and shows him the army of Ultrons.
In the negative zone. Yeah, from last episode, and calling back to that.
And they decide that we need to enlist the Ultron robots. They're our best chance against Kang. And so the pacifist Hank Pym reprograms Ultron. I feel like this is so pivotal because...
hold on.
Yeah.
Pym is fighting them on this, which is like...
Yeah. he has reservations.
A little bit different from 616, like where
Very
he's just
different.
like he's immediately belts Ultron, and this he fights back a little bit, like, hey, we shouldn't be doing this.
This was not why I made Ultron, and he talks about
humanizes him more.
Yeah, it does. I love that you bring this up because again, this show's version of Hank is my favorite version of Hank Pym. It's better than the MCU, more likable, better than the MCU version, better than the 616, infinitely better than the Ultimate version. This is the best. This is my preferred Hank Pym. And it's for moments like this. And we are reminded that in this continuity, Ultron is a collaborative work between Tony and Hank. And everything that Ultron could be used bad for is a Tony contribution. And everything that is additive and helpful is a Hank contribution. And what I mean by that is Tony gave Ultron weaponry.
In this show, Hank's morals remain uncorrupted.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, in 616, he has a fall from grace, you know? He slaps Jan.
Dramatically.
He slaps Jan in Avengers 213, you know what I mean?
And creates the biggest Avengers villain of all time, which was Ultron. And so in this, he teaches Ultron violence. And last episode, I had mentioned that Wally Winger was the voice of Hank and the voice of Ultron. The voice credit changes in this episode, where it's not Wally Winger.
That programming.
Yeah, it's Tom Kane. And I don't know if this is a fact, but I do guess that Tom Kane takes over after he reprograms Ultron, pulls out his little CPU, changes it from blue to red, and teaches him violence. And I think that's the moment the voice changes, and it's so subtle, but how brilliant.
That is a cool idea to change
nice
his
little
voice.
Flourish.
And I thought it was really a big move to do Ultron and Kang in the same storyline.
It is.
I had that thought. I was just like, it's very ambitious to mix those two things together because they're intertwined, and we get a lot of Ultron here in this episode.
I'll say though, they do it in a very elegant.
It's well done. I'm not ripping on it.
No, I know you're not.
Yeah,
but
I'm not ripping on it.
I'm saying, like, you're right to point that out because it is very impressive how methodical and seamless it feels. Like, it makes perfect story sense. The stakes they've set up require a force as powerful as Ultron to deal with.
It's the two of the biggest Avengers villains put together in the same storyline.
I'd say 2 of the top 4 biggest Avengers villains are in this story. Maybe top 5.
I always liked Ultron.
Oh yeah. Well, and actually, I'm trying to remember. In Age of Ultron, the movie was the scene where Ultron overtakes Jarvis. Was that a similar thing where Paul Bettany's voice kind of changes to James Spader's voice?
No, it's more of
or
like
was James Spader's voice always kind of in the mix? I don't remember.
It's as I remember, it's more of a confrontation.
Okay.
Where it's like.
It's not a change.
Jarvis notices Ultron is there, and he's like, "Who are you?" You know, and then it's like, I'm everything.
Yeah, that was.
James Spader's very intimidating in that role.
That was a great Paul Bettany impression.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, like you say, it becomes Ultron versus the Kang army, and this is where they manage to stop the battle in New York. They drive him away because they figure out how to displace the spaceships from time and unanchor them from time.
Yeah, there's a big scene where they take out the inside of the ship.
But they realize that none of this will change, none of this will stop until they stop Kang himself. And then Tony, who's becoming very, very frustrated, feeling very helpless, finally he yells out, "Where on Earth are you?" and realizes, oh, you're not on Earth. And he manages to find the Damocles spaceship in orbit.
Tony has a meltdown. He punches the council.
Yeah.
And has just a complete mental breakdown.
He has a little tantrum.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, and then you're right. He has this eureka moment.
Yeah. And then we find the Damocles base, and that's where they're going to take the fight. They're going to take it to Kang.
Yeah, Iron Man flies off into space.
Yeah.
But it's a very much like, to be continued.
Oh, yeah.
It just leaves off there. It's Tony flies into space and boom, next episode.
Yeah, whereas part 1 of this whole Kang saga kind of had a nice little bow tied onto that conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kind of have the cliffhanger of the invasion starting.
Yeah.
This one very much is part 2 has a cliffhanger that is very much tied into the plot we've been watching. And it's not going to get resolved this episode. It's definitely not self-contained.
It's definitely a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a lot of Busiek comics to talk about. So
yes.
we're gonna cut it here. Come back. Talk about some panels.
Oh yeah. Let's dive into some ink.
Welcome back to Issues with Cartoons. We'll be talking about the Avengers 41 through 47.
47. So this is from the 2001-2002 era of Marvel when Kurt Busiek was writing the Avengers. This is actually kind of his magnum opus. This is like the grand finale of his run, was the Kang Dynasty storyline, which lasted, I think, 16 issues. It was like from issue 41 to like 55 or something. Yeah, it was over a year.
Over a year.
And I remember reading it as a kid thinking it was like the most epic thing. It was like this huge... It
kind of is, though.
It's like a sequel to the Avengers Forever miniseries I keep talking about. It's one of the best Kang stories I've ever read.
A lot of the characters featured.
Yeah, and a huge cast. An enormous cast of characters. And I was starting to read this and I was kind of afraid. I was like... I really hope that revisiting this as a 35-year-old feels as good as when I read it as a 12-year-old. Because when I was 12, this was the coolest freaking book I've ever read. You know, like
yeah, loaded with superheroes.
Avengers Forever, my favorite book still, my favorite Avengers story still. I hoped that this lived up to it, and I feel like, I'll just say it up front, I feel like this delivers. It's a very, very sprawling story. There's a lot of moving parts.
It's a true epic. It really raises the stakes with Kang.
And much the way the episode does, where you kind of get the stakes sort of set out for you at the beginning of the episode. I feel like the stakes for this storyline are very apparent and very clear to the reader as you kind of dive in.
Yeah, and now, like, putting Kang in this role of kind of observing the conflict, I feel like he almost takes a back seat. You have, like, the Avengers, like, fighting his armies around the world.
They're like proxies.
Yeah, but they use it as, like, a way to explore Kang's backstory more. Because it's like, meanwhile, the Avengers are fighting all these threats on Earth, and Kang's just kind of sitting back in a spaceship, and we get more of the Centurion, the Red Centurion,
the Scarlet Centurion.
Scarlet, yeah, and you get more backstory of Kang, is what I'm saying. This way, narratively.
So I absolutely agree, and I guess the short logline pitch for this storyline this is Kang conquering the 21st century, because Kang's whole deal is that he conquers timelines, and this saga that we're about to read is the example of what that actually means, what that actually looks like. Like when he's conquering a world in a given timeline, what does that look like, and what does it look like when he wins? And it kind of shows off how, he's not only a formidable fighter, he's a brilliant strategist, he's an excellent manipulator, and he's a very formidable leader, and I think you see that here. And this introduces a new character, the Scarlet Centurion, who is actually a remix of a couple of old characters. Scarlet Centurion is actually a variant of Kang, originally. There's a different version of Scarlet Centurion. It's so confusing talking about Kang. Kang has lots of different iterations. We've talked about Ramatut. We've talked about Immortus. There's also Iron Lad. There's Victor Timely. Another one of them is the Scarlet Centurion.
Who's a key character in this.
The Scarlet Centurion mostly features in Squadron Supreme comics. This character, the Scarlet Centurion, is a new version of that name. So it's a brand new character. who is a character named Marcus, who is also of reference to a separate older character. So if you can imagine, there's the Kang version of Scarlet Centurion, and there's the Immortus version of Marcus. And this character that we're meeting is a brand new character who is a Kang version of Marcus.
Right.
Dressed as a Scarlet Centurion.
And we
I mean, it's so hard to even explain it, but it's important that you, the listener, know that, because so much of what we're going to talk about with the Scarlet Centurion later references this older version of Marcus that is pretty relevant to the events of this story.
This splash page, though, of Kang's ship,
of the Damocles base is sexy.
Damocles, it's
so effective.
A great rendering, and it's very classic too, but it's like, it is a great drawing of this spaceship kind of coming in the orbit.
The scale is clear,
the
dynamism.
Good cross-hatching, nice detail on the ship. It reminds me of something like a Star Destroyer.
Yeah,
flying
it really
over
does.
Tatooine
Very Star
or something.
Wars. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's almost a Star Wars shot.
Opening shot. Yeah, it's a really beautiful page, and the artwork, honestly, throughout this is classic.
Really,
it's very classically rendered, and we get a lot of Avenger characters I really like. I really like Miss Marvel, who's Warbird in this.
Yeah, at this point she's Warbird.
Yeah, we get Photon, who is Monica Rambeau. She's been Miss Marvel too.
Yeah, she's been Captain Marvel also.
We get a little bit of Black Knight, and we talked about him earlier.
Well, and real quick, before we start talking about the cast, I want to give some shout-outs to some creators. So Kurt Busiek's the writer.
Okay.
Alan Davis does the first few issues, and I think it's Manuel Garcia does the other issues that
I was upset he didn't draw the whole thing.
I know.
I was really hyped. I was really hyped. When I read this first one, I was like, Alan Davis. So I was like, all right.
Man, it's tough to start with Alan Davis and then not have Alan Davis. Manuel Garcia does a good job. But man,
it's seamless.
Alan
you don't really
Davis,
notice.
though, is fabulous. And actually, if you want more Alan Davis with Kurt Busiek on script, go back a few issues, because Alan Davis actually does a good chunk of the comics that Kurt Busiek writes. But
it's solid.
Yeah, so one thing that I had texted you when I was reading this is that this storyline felt like a JLU episode, like a Justice League Unlimited episode.
It totally is, because they have more characters than they know what to do with. And
they drop in all kinds of characters.
And some of them are just reduced to cameos because of the scope of this.
There's just no room for any kind of time to be given to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the villains. Like, there's so many villains in this, not just Avengers.
You have Atuma,
so many Avengers.
And Atlantis.
The Winter Guard, the Presence all show up.
Who's the guy that shows up later? He's the Master of the World shows up.
Which I guess is an X-Men or Alpha Flight character.
He makes a play at Kang. He's like, whoa, you can't take over the world. I control the world.
Yeah. And that an incredible conflict that I don't even know how you could even think of that.
How did you feel about this characterization of like older Quicksilver? Kind of in this, and he's like the divorced dad.
Quicksilver, yeah. Where the only thing he's good at is superheroing. He's a failed husband and a terrible father.
Yeah, he has a line about that.
Yeah, I think it gives him, because Quicksilver, for me as a reader, I mean, he's always just been kind of the grumpy Gus of the group. Like, he's kind of like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, he's just kind of like too good for everybody. Irritable, I think, is the word I would use. There's that famous Peter David monologue in X Factor where he talks about everyone moves at a snail's pace, and he has to, it's like waiting in line at the bank, but like for everything, like everything's just painfully boring to him because everyone moves so slow. So that's the only characterization I know of him.
Yeah.
It's nice to see him have some other complexities to his feelings. Let's talk about some of these characters. It's impossible to name all of them, but there are some key players.
Yeah, one of them is Firebird, because Firebird and Thor have a romance that's kind of going on.
Yeah, well, like a kinship. There's like this interesting.
Is that what it is? I read it as romance.
Did you read it? Yeah. I read it as like
they're kind of button heads at first.
Well, I kind of read it as like so in we'll get to all the plot later, but there's a plot point where Firebird realizes she's immortal. And she's in this situation with Thor, obviously also an immortal, and she is a theist. She's a Catholic. She's a believer, and the notion of living forever in the mortal world is sort of problematic for her because she thinks that the reward comes in the afterlife and that she's being denied that, and she has a hard time detaching herself from humanity. And Thor's like, well, you got to cut ties with mortals because you're going to outlive all of them. And this is really interesting dialogue between the two about immortality and about immortality. And I really like that dynamic. But this is the era where you have, so you have Cap, Thor and Iron Man, you have Goliath, you have Wasp. Wasp is kind of one of the chair people. She's kind of in charge.
Yeah,
Scarlet Witch is the deputy chairperson. You also have Wonder Man, you have Vision, you have Ms. Marvel, Warbird. She hasn't become Captain Marvel yet. You also have Silverclaw and Triathlon, which are Kurt Busiek creations, co-creations with George Perez. You mentioned Black Knight shows up, Firebird shows up, Quicksilver shows up.
It's a big team.
Stingray shows up.
This is what
incredible.
we mean when we're talking about this is a Justice League Unlimited episode. Because it's too many characters.
I've listed a dozen. That's not even all of them.
That's not even all of them.
No.
And they don't even resolve Hank Pym's storyline in the main book. They take it over to an annual.
Yeah.
And then cut back to the main series.
I almost even hesitate to bring that up because
it'll eat so much time. It's
so complicated and so convoluted. But basically, Yellow Jacket is the persona that Hank ends up adopting in this storyline. And it has to do with some psyche problems that he's having where he's kind of fighting an inner battle with himself. And that gets resolved in an annual that ties into the storyline.
Yeah, and so much so, like, when he shows up as Yellow Jacket, the other characters are surprised. They're like, why aren't you Giant Man? Why aren't you Goliath? Why are you Yellow Jacket? There's almost like an evil connotation to Yellow Jacket.
And you had mentioned the slap.
Yes, in
earlier.
213.
And so Yellow Jacket as a character, as a persona, is infamous. Mm-hmm. Like, he's notorious. He's a bad he's a bad thing.
Well, what's the version of Yellow Jacket we see in Siege?
Oh, so that is Rita Damara. She's the second Yellow Jacket.
She's the kind of the villain.
She's a villain who ends up you may not remember this. This doesn't happen in Under Siege, but Rita Damara is a villain in the Masters of Evil, reforms, becomes an Avenger, becomes a Guardian of the Galaxy for the future Guardians of the Galaxy, comes back to the present day, and is killed by Tony Stark during the Crossing storyline that we read, that Janet becomes a wasp creature. Worth noting that annual that talks about Yellow Jacket and Goliath also has a backup feature that explains why Janet is no longer a wasp creature. So it ties into a story we've talked about before, which is interesting. But
back to what we were talking about, Yellow Jacket has this evil connotation.
Yeah, so it's off-putting to a lot of them, but he's trying to like reclaim it and like reassert himself as like a good person. I think what this storyline points out to me is that a lot of Kurt Busiek's run is trying to do a few things. One of them is redeem Hank Pym.
Definitely trying to do that.
One of them is
seriously trying to do that.
One of them is to do justice to Carol Danvers, which we're going to talk about.
She is featured a lot.
Well, and for good reason, he's trying to right a wrong. And then I think another thing he's trying to do that doesn't take place in this story, but that he had addressed previously, is kind of solve the vision problem that Avengers created, because Vision is a very convoluted Avenger with a lot of complicated history and a lot of conflicting reports about his origin, and he resolves a lot of that in his run.
He goes on a vision quest.
A vision quest, if you will, which is actually a storyline in Avengers history. But I know you probably know that. Sorry, I'm nerding. But in this Kang Dynasty storyline, he kind of ties up some loose ends that I think he had set out to fix. Like, Hank Pym had been character assassinated for decades. He solves that to the best he can. Carol Danvers had been completely character assassinated That's not even the word. She had been victimized. She wasn't character assassinated.
Yeah.
She was victimized.
That's a good way of putting it.
By an entire lineup of creators in a story that we'll talk about in a little bit. I think he was coming to deliver justice to Carol and Hank and to kind of clean up some loose ends with Vision. And frankly, I think Kurt Busiek loves Kang. I think Kang I think is a favorite villain of his because he writes the hell out of Kang.
He writes a convincing Kang. And he's like at his most evil here. He's got little henchmen to take out his will. He doesn't have to physically fight the Avengers himself.
No,
he kind of takes a back seat.
But something you pointed out that I love that I hadn't realized when I read this as a kid is that not only is Kang's voice very consistent with Avengers number 8, even like the army that he has, like the characters surrounding Kang, very consistent with what we've seen in the past with Kang. And I really like that a lot here. So that's...
He shows up in this first issue on that share
from
his first appearance.
I think even holding a similar handheld device.
Yeah, no, it is. And it's homaging, his whole history.
And a lot of the lineup that's there is similar to the lineup that appeared. I mean, Hank, Jan, and Tony... Steve is in this lineup. Thor's in this lineup.
Yeah,
like
Cap shows up.
The founders are all there.
It's crazy when they fight that brainwash Cap, isn't it?
Oh, dude. Yeah.
Later on, yeah.
Because so I guess just to talk generally, because we're not going to be able to go issue by issue with this, but to talk generally about
we got time.
Oh yeah, sure. What are you all doing? Nothing. Just here to listen to us talk about Avengers. But so Kang shows up. Scarlet Centurion is kind of like his leading general. And Scarlet Centurion is Marcus. His name is Marcus. And he opens up by saying, I'm here to take over. He shows him all these potential futures. And,
you're getting at Kang's motivation here.
Yeah,
for doing all this.
Before he does that, he just says, hey, just so you know that you're going to lose, I'm going to blow up the UN embassy real quick. I'm going to blow it up for you.
Yeah, and it's a crazy page. He blows up.
Yeah, he blows up the UN embassy.
Insane.
And they're like, "Oh, you just killed all those people." And he's like, "Actually, I didn't. Here, I saved them all. See, I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm here to save you."
Yeah.
What am I saving you from? I'm saving you from all these terrible futures that are coming. And actually, it's a mixture of actual future storylines that have been hinted at before. And a mix of invented.
So just to break it down for our listeners, Kang is defeating them to save them from future threats.
Yes.
Morally, he's doing the right thing.
Yeah, similar to kind of what the episode talks about, where there's this threat that's going to destroy you all. The only thing that can save you is me.
Yeah.
In a very authoritarian, very familiar kind of rhetoric. The only one who can stop these threats is me. I'm the savior. I can fix it. All you have to do is give me complete control.
Nobody knows the future like I know the future.
Right.
Trust me, I got this.
Right. And so then he shows you a whole bunch of potential futures where, everyone becomes radioactive ghosts. Everyone becomes robots. There's a scene where you see a bunch of aliens fighting Crimson Dynamo and Killraven and Thundra and Black Panther. And I only bring that up because... This is a future storyline we see in Avengers Forever. So we know this is a possibility.
I didn't realize that tied in.
Yeah, so this is, and that's what I mean, and that's actually Jocasta there, but that's what I mean when I say this is pretty much a sequel to Avengers Forever. So it
references
the resolution of Avengers Forever leads to Kang deciding I'm just going to go all out and take over the 21st century.
Something I thought was cool reading this for the first time is anytime we get these shots of the future or anytime we get a scene on the other side of the world, there's tons of cameos of different characters, and you could pick them out and stuff. Yeah. And I thought that was cool.
You get Magneto and Sunfire.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You get characters from the rest of the Marvel universe.
Yeah, for sure.
Pop up. Even the Sentinels get mentioned, but that's later.
Yeah, and we'll get there because that actually plays a pretty significant part that we'll talk about in the next episode. But but yeah, so basically Kang's argument is you just need to give me control. And meanwhile,
give up. I'm
Scarlet
here to
Scarlet
guide this ship.
Centurion has noticed Carol in the crowd and is kind of smitten with her, and we're going to talk about that later. But basically, she starts to kind of think, "Oh, I feel like I know you. Why do I feel like I know you?" And realizes that Scarlet Centurion's real name is Marcus, and that will become relevant when we talk about the last issue of our coverage today. But
I wasn't too stoked about reading that. That was honestly the weakest part of this. Like the rest of it, I loved. It's just like it's fun. But it's like globe trotting with the Avengers. There's non-stop battles,
world scale battle.
That's one of the things about the storyline is like if you're a fan of action, like this does not let up on the superhero theatrics at all.
And again, as a 12-year-old reading this,
right, a 12-year-old would love it.
This was like peak superhero. I've never read anything like this other than Avengers Forever, which was by the same writer.
Like we're just off running with the superhero battles. It doesn't stop.
I want to be a little bit of an apologist for this book because you said your criticism is the Marcus bit.
A little bit.
And my apology, my only way of forgiving the book for that is that it's actually the thing that you don't like about it is something that was done by a different creative team decades before. And what's interesting is Kurt Busiek decides to not ignore it and he decides to actually do something to address it.
Kurt Busiek seems to like really love the Marvel continuity, and he wants to make improvements to it. He wants to fix things he doesn't like about it, and that's definitely prevalent. And
he definitely uses it as a tool instead of a hindrance, I think.
Yeah, is it a deterrent to the story? I'm not sure. Make up your own mind about that. I like this scene of the future here, and there's like a Spider-Man's mask.
Oh, and Iron Man's armor's ripped open.
Ripped in half. That was fun.
That was super cool.
I like that.
And that ties into kind of the B-plot of a lot of this story, which is the Winter Guard is this Russian super team, and one of its members is called the Presence, and he is the father of this dead superhero named Vanguard, and in trying to revive his son, ends up creating these like radiation ghosts, and so the Avengers have gone into Russia to solve the problem.
What about this like Vision Ultron?
Yeah, that robot. Those robot.
Is that in Avengers Forever, or is that?
I don't know if that's Avengers Forever. I don't remember that. Might be,
but
I think it might be from. There's an Ultron storyline that we're gonna cover in season 2 by Busiek and Perez, and I think they reference like a potential future where all the humans are replaced by robots, and I think that might be what that's referencing.
Yeah, there's Scarlet Witch Ultron behind there too.
And this is not explicit, and I'm sure this is just incidental, but that idea of the two worlds colliding and wiping each other out reminded me of incursion events that Hickman would do in his run of Avengers like a decade and a half later. Not obviously an explicit reference to that, but the same sort of thematic idea of like a potential future. So, as Kang's forces are descending, what Kang does is he basically promises anyone who's willing to help him gets a piece of the Empire when he's finished. Yeah. So what that does is it draws out all these proxy armies that, like you say, he doesn't really have to lift a finger. Atuma's going to lift a finger. Presence is going to lift a finger. Like, all these other forces are going to do his dirty work for him.
They do a good job referencing the continuity with, like, Namor, because, like, Atuma is from Atlantis and stuff. So, like it's kind of a callback to that.
Yeah, or the deviants from the Eternals show up and that kind of thing. Yeah, so, like, they do reference a whole, like you said, not just superheroes, but supervillains, just from deep cuts.
I think this is, like, this era of Marvel is, like, the last time I see, like, classic comic book inks with like digital coloring.
Yeah.
I feel like after this, like a lot of the this isn't a good or a bad thing, but a lot of the Marvel art drifted to being less house style than this. It's like the end of a classic era.
I'm glad you bring that up in terms of coloring. I'll bring it up in terms of story as well. I feel like this feels like one of the last classic Marvel comics. Not the last, because obviously other ones are. Well, but what I mean is, like, I feel like decompression starts after this. I feel like
Yeah.
You know, the ultimatizing of the Marvel Universe, the MCUifying of the Marvel Universe
That's such a good point because, Ultimate kicks off shortly after this. Joe Quesada just stepped in.
This is 2001.
Joe Quesada just stepped into the house. Yeah. Bendis just got hired. You know, Ultimate like Spider-Man just came out. It's coming out.
And what this represents is the last books that have been kind of greenlit before Quesada stepped in.
Overhauls.
And then he changes everything. So... important to note, though, that this isn't the last book before New Avengers, before Quesada really leaves his mark on Avengers. Chuck Austin has a run. Jeff Johns has a run. I only bring that up because I think there's this misconception, and Kurt Busiek has talked about this. People like Mark Millar will say that the Avengers were floundering, and that's why the Ultimates was greenlit. Mm-hmm. This is one of the best Avengers stories that had come out up to this point.
So the Avengers were not.
The Avengers were not floundering. It was later that the decision to overhaul the Avengers with New Avengers happened. It almost had nothing to do with the Ultimates, but the storytelling and the storytelling style that happened with New Marvel and Ultimate Marvel.
I can draw a parallel to X-Men as well.
Tell me,
because they had Dream's End, which is considered by a lot of people to be the last, like you said with this, is the last classic X-Men story. It's the last story we see, like Wolverine drawn with the yellow costume and stuff.
Sure.
And even
like
Cyclops.
Morrison.
Yeah. Cyclops died in the 12 and came back, and he was kind of like an ultimate version, or based off of the movies, he showed up in like an all-black costume and stuff. And that was considered, though, by a lot of people, Dream's End to be like the last classic X-Men story, because after that, guess whose run starts?
Yeah.
Grant Morrison.
Yeah.
So it's like Marvel was kind of like cutting off the classic look, and they were like, all right, we're going to start making our comics look more like the movies.
And you know what else, too?
It was a pivot, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what else, too? This is a line-wide... This would be a line-wide event if it were published 5 years later.
Oh, sure.
But it's self-contained. It's contained in the Avengers book. The Kang Dynasty does not exist in any other title.
Or they would make this a miniseries.
Exactly.
And it wouldn't be in main continuity.
Exactly. But this is an Avengers story. And I feel like that doesn't happen now, where you have these earth-shattering events that take place within a title. You know, like I feel like if the Galactus trilogy happened today, it would be an event.
A 24-issue story, you know,
It would be a 6-issue event with a 30-issue tie-ins, and the Fantastic Four title would just be like a tie-in.
These read a little bit faster than we talked about it in previous episodes, but we've been covering a lot of the 60s era of Marvel, like 1963, like the early stuff. Yeah. And it's like these read slightly faster,
they do,
but not as fast as those decompression
I
that
feel
you're
like
talking
you get
about.
More,
yeah.
There's more content, there's more density.
There is. There's like slightly more. There's like less density than the 60s comics, but there's like not as much as like, you know, Saga or...
I completely agree.
Or
New Avengers.
Or what came later. Yeah, exactly. New Avengers was like a movie.
Or Ultimates or any of that stuff. Yeah, I completely agree. And
where should comics go? Should comics be compressed or decompressed?
Are you asking me or the listener?
Well, I'm asking you.
I think there's room for both. There's places for both. I feel like stories like this one benefit from the density.
Right.
Because I think that's the global stakes. You're able to fit a lot more in without having to sacrifice character moments. You're still able to pack a lot of plot in. Yeah. Because they allow for things like dialogue during action or captions that explain, context or any number of things that I feel like you don't get with decompressed storytelling. I like, and maybe it's because it's how I was raised on this style, right? Like I was 12. This is where my formative ideas and opinions were happening.
Definitely. I want to make this clear for our listeners. Me and Kyle are basically the same age.
Right.
So it's like, I remember these vividly when I was 10, even though I didn't actively read these.
Right. And I'll say it too, like this is 16 issues. This is not a short story. Like this is not, it's a compressed story, but it's not so compressed that it's short. It's a 1.5 year event. And I feel like you get a whole lot of stuff going on in here.
There's a ton. I mean,
and if you tried to tell
epic.
this same story with a decompressed story style, it would be a 4-year story.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Jack of Hearts is in this. Like,
that was wild.
Justice and Firestar are in this. I mean, it's so many characters.
The Presence.
Yeah.
So the Presence brainwashes Cap, and Thor fights Cap.
Black Knight, and Quicksilver. Yeah, and it kind of shakes Thor up a little bit to fight Cap. And it kind of reminds him that he is becoming too attached to these mortals. Hercules and She-Hulk have a cameo. My gosh, it's just incredible.
Yeah. She-Hulk, I appreciated that. That was fun. That was fun. Black Widow shows up for a little bit.
I don't know how much you want to talk about the various plot points of like the Deviants or the Presence or Atuma or how Whirlwind shows up and gets cast aside by Kang. I want to make sure we give a little bit of time to talk about Carol Danvers and
we can jump to that. We can jump to that because like we touched on a lot of the stuff I wanted to talk about, like Warbird and Cap being brainwashed.
And you had mentioned like the Sentinels, the kind of gambit that the government is running is like, we'll let the Avengers deal with this until they can't, and if they can't, we're stepping in and we're going to use the Sentinels. That's kind of like the big kind of that's the Damocles sword hanging over the Avengers right now.
Yeah, so like the government wants to launch the Sentinels because if they don't launch the Sentinels, then they're afraid that they're going to lose control of the Earth. But that becomes the reason why the Avengers Cap go after Kang,
right?
Because they're like, if we don't take out Kang now, the Sentinels are going to malfunction and just take over the Earth. These Sentinels are evil. We know this. We've encountered the Sentinels enough times. They don't trust.
We need to take care of it. We don't trust the government. We don't trust the Sentinels.
Yeah, which is fair.
Yeah, so that's the main plot of the story. I want to talk about Scarlet Centurion with the time we have left because I feel like this is a major thesis for Kurt Busiek and a major reason why he would include such a convoluted character like the Scarlet Centurion in this. So in issue 45, we get an origin of Marcus and the Scarlet Centurion, which basically Kang uses eugenics to pick out the perfect mate, copulates in a very like
ridiculous,
very
ridiculous,
very gross kind of way.
It was gross.
To basically create the perfect spawn who he raises in a time bubble to create the Scarlet Centurion. So you have that context. Skipping ahead, and I know I'm skipping over a whole lot of plot.
That's fine.
But
we broke it down.
I feel like we broke it down. So if you skip ahead all the way to issue 47, okay, you get this issue where the Master of the World has appeared, and Warbird basically is going to invade the Master of the World's headquarters, and she's kind of trapped. Mm-hmm. And Scarlet Centurion arrives to save her because, like I mentioned, he'd taken notice of her at the beginning of this kind of plot, and he's kind of smitten with her, and he wants to kind of help her, and she's very reluctant, and we are reminded of Avengers 200. Which is a storyline that took place, in the 70s, written by Dave McElhaney, Bob Layton, George Perez, and Jim Shooter, and is generally regarded as the worst Avengers story ever published, with good reason. And it ties specifically in with issue 47 of the Kang Dynasty. And we get a flashback to Carol Danvers at this time, and I'm going to try to be as blunt as I can because
go for it.
It's pretty gross. So, what the reason that Carol is so skeeved by Scarlet Centurion and why she doesn't trust him is because his name is Marcus and he's the son of Kang. Kang is the younger version of Immortus, and in the 70s they did a story where where Immortus's son, also named Marcus, we're going to call him Marcus Immortus for the purpose of this discussion. Marcus Immortus was the son of Immortus, and he was trapped in limbo, and he wanted to get out of limbo. So to get out of limbo, he kidnaps Carol Danvers, uses technology to brainwash her so he can conceive a child with her, send her back to Earth. She goes through an entire pregnancy in about 48 hours, delivers a baby, and that baby, in the span of about an hour, grows up to be Marcus Immortus. So, to be blunt...
And you won't read that in Captain Marvel.
Nope. To be blunt, Marcus Immortus rapes Carol Danvers...
Essentially.
...to give birth to himself so he could be his own lover's child. And then...
It's crazy.
At the end, brainwashes her to go with him into limbo. And what makes this especially gross is that the other Avengers, instead of being like, oh my god, you were raped to have your rapist's baby, which is your rapist, instead of being like that, they're all like, oh, I'm going to knit you some baby socks, or I'll give him a teddy bear. Oh, I'm so happy for you. You must be so excited to be a mom. And no one gives a crap about the sexual trauma that Carol Danvers experiences.
It's strange. I have this complaint about Marvel, like, it just reads like some weird, like, fan fiction stuff. Like,
it reads like a bunch of repressed men are writing this, which is what it is.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't think that Stan would have ever written something like this. I don't think, like, early Avengers comics, stuff like this would happen. You know, it's just only stuff that would be introduced later in, like, the 80s.
I went ahead and read it. We didn't prepare it as a team for this episode.
No, we didn't.
I went back and read it, and it's gross.
I found the Carol Danvers, like, Immortus, Red Centurion, Scarlet Centurion, Marcus stuff was very convoluted and honestly dragged the storyline down. Like, if you didn't have that issue and you didn't have, like, the Marcus rape stuff, like, in it, like, it would have been a much stronger arc overall.
I agree, but given that this storyline is part of the Marvel canon and a
It
big
is.
part of Carol's backstory, because it's worth noting, if I can just talk a little more context before we talk about your point.
Sure.
The next time we see Carol Danvers is in Avengers Annual number 10, written by Chris Claremont. The reason that's important, Chris Claremont was the last person to write Carol's solo title, Ms. Marvel, before the Marcus story happened. Apparently, Jim Shooter washes his hand of the whole thing. He says, oh, I don't know how that got approved. I don't know why my name is listed as a co-plotter. I have no memory of any of this. And he throws Dave Michelini under the bus and says Dave Michelini and Chris Claremont were feuding at the time. Maybe he was just trying to stick it to Chris Claremont since he knew Claremont loved Carol as a character. I don't believe that. I think Jim's trying to, like, give himself a little bit of space between this terrible storyline and himself. But my point is, Chris Claremont loved Carol Danvers as a character. He had a lot of plans for Carol Danvers as a character. It got shortcut because her title was canceled. He writes Avengers Annual number 10, which introduces Rogue. It also gives Carol a chance to basically call the Avengers to the carpet for basically being terrible friends and giving her rapist more credibility than her. It's a very good rebuttal. It's the only real rebuttal that happens to this storyline.
Yeah.
The reason I bring that up. So, this story is an important story for Carol because it leads directly to Rogue and leading to Rogue taking Carol's identity, which is another big milestone in Carol's story. So
it might be the milestone.
Yeah,
honestly, it's referenced a lot.
And I think to do a story about Kang the Conqueror, where Carol Danvers is another cast member, it would be almost permitting the rape story and saying that it was inconsequential if you don't address it. So I think you need that moment of acknowledgement to be like, hey, like, we're in this room together, we both know what happened, let's talk about it and let's get this out of the way. Again, I think Kurt was out to redeem or not redeem.
I was about to say
to provide justice to Carol.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I agree that it's kind of a deviation, especially if you don't have the context. But I do think with the context, you understand why it's necessary. I don't think it's necessary to show the sex scene where he's raping her.
No, I didn't need that. But like Busiek is cleaning up the continuity, which we've seen him do over and over here. He just loves these characters and he wants the best versions of them on the page.
There are entire issues of Avengers Forever that are just cleaning up continuity. But in this Marcus Kang, Scarlet Centurion Marcus. I'm gonna maybe make that as the delineation. Scarlet Centurion Marcus tries to make the point that he's a different Marcus. He has a different mother.
They bring that up.
He never had that same history. He's not the son of Immortus. He's the son of Kang.
Red Centurion's a new man.
Yeah, and jury's still out. We have not read the rest of the storyline to know if she's completely sold on that idea, but she at least is willing to work with him.
Kyle, does this hold up to, you mentioned earlier, your younger self reading this as an adult. Does it hold up?
Oh, probably more. I'll say
you think it holds up more?
Because I have more context. I have way more context. I love the sprawlingness of this story. This feels like what an Avengers story should be. It should be epic. It should be earth-shattering. You should need to have all these characters to solve this problem. That's the whole point of having Earth's mightiest heroes.
Right.
I love a good Loki event. I love a good Ultron event. I love a good Masters of Evil fight. But to have the entire world under threat and have dozens of characters calling themselves Avengers assembling to fight a hero no single hero can withstand, which is the whole epitaph of Avengers stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's worthy of that kind of fight. It's worthy of that kind of story.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this before we even started recording. It feels like a Justice League Unlimited episode. It's just the last call of we have all this years of continuity. Let's reference all of it and let's do a really big story. I think you could have done something different with if Kang had acted like he did in Avengers 8 and just showed up and fought the Avengers, but you wouldn't have something on this scale.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that he's less proactive as a villain. He comes across less threatening, but in a way,
he's less direct.
Yeah, it sets the stage for all these other events to happen. So it's I'll allow it. It's fine.
So let me ask you, as someone who's never read this, where does this fall for you? How would you rate it? How do you feel about it as an event, as a story?
It's definitely better than some Avengers crossovers I've read. Is it my favorite thing? Too soon to tell. I might be able to do a verdict after we read the second half, but it is epic. I mean, you get all the superhero fights you could ever ask for and stuff. I would almost argue the whole thing is a giant fight.
Yeah.
It's just non-stop superhero theatrics and stuff.
With character woven in, which I think is worth noting. I feel where some events, and I'm not going to name any names, some events will change characterizations to fit the story. I think this uses characterizations to enhance and embellish the story. I feel all these characters are written spot on. This does feel as someone who's read the whole Busiek run, this does feel like a culmination of that run. I think it's a worthy finale for that run.
Yeah, and all the characters are written like the characters too, which is more than I can say for stuff that came later.
Yep.
There's some later Marvel comics, especially from the later 2000s and even now, that I read that I'm just they don't get the character voices.
Yeah.
The character voices are off. There's little things here and there. It reads fan fiction in that way. And this doesn't. This is a writer that respects the continuity and respects the characters and just wants to tell a story in the universe. So with that, I appreciate it. Kyle, do you have any more thoughts on this?
The only thing that made me think of, and this is my last point.
Okay.
I think a big reason why the voices of the characters are different now than they were in the late 90s, early 2000s, like when this book was published.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is this pre-Ultimates, not only is this pre, like, new Marvel, this is also pre-MCU. And I think that the MCUification of the characterizations really did change publishing, did change the way these characters are presented. And I feel like this isn't the last classic Avengers characterizations, but it's one of the last, and it's one of the last big ones. And I think that's one of the things that makes it very nostalgic for me, is like, these are very much the ones I recognize. These are very similar to what we saw in Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Those kind of do-gooder superheroes.
Because we'll never get an Iron Man that's not Robert Downey Jr. That's what you're getting at, right?
That's the perfect example. Yep.
Yeah, well, like we'll never get like Thor.
This is Tony Stark.
Like
we're reading about Tony Stark in this. Like I know that Tony Stark. I've read that Tony Stark all my life. That's not Robert Downey Jr. Tony Stark. And same with Thor. I mean, same with Captain America. Same with Wasp. They're very familiar characters to me in this, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like it. All right, Carl. Anything else you have to say about this?
I'm curious to see how it all shakes out. I know it's almost a year-long event. Over a year. I'm just kind of curious how we take care of Kang. I'm expecting a giant boss fight from all the other fights I've seen. You know, we got to have a big throwdown with Kang, hopefully.
It's good.
So
we didn't even talk about the Triune Understanding. We'll talk about that more next episode. But there's a lot of moving parts, and it culminates very nicely. You also get Kieran Dwyer on art next on the next half, which I am excited to read.
Do you have any more thoughts, Kyle? Anything else you want to say about this?
No, Avengers Assemble. I'm excited to read more. All right, Carl, what do you have to plug?
www.carllucasdraws.bsky.social. You can check out my book Shogun Bear and the House of Horrors. I have a couple minis. Captain Devil. I have a new one. It's called what is it called? Shadow Star. I'm gonna expand on all this stuff later.
Is that your mini comic you did for Space?
Yeah. I did a middle. With J.M. Hunter and Bob Corby. We do a mini comic day where we draw a 24-hour comic. And it's very challenging. I got 8 pages done in 24 hours, but it's hard to draw, ink, and make a cover for a comic book in 24 hours. But I love the ideas it gives you.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to quit my job so I can do that with you next year.
Kyle, what do you got to plug?
Well, hopefully... Hopefully I still have a job after I said that.
That's brutal.
Yeah, so Ko-fi.com/kylewindle. I got Cornelius Armstrong Adventures and Antics and Cornelius Armstrong and the Great Good Heart. I also have Thunderduck and Mad Science Rejects Minis 1 and 2. And you can also commission me there. Contact at IssuesWithCartoons.com for any comments, questions, or if you're very concerned about something, if you're concerned about my employment, reach out to me.
If you're concerned about Thunderduck, like what's going on with Thunderduck.
When is the next Thunderduck coming out? Listen, I want to know that too.
We want more Thunderduck. Thunderduck's super fun.
Thunderduck. And then you can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, probably Bluesky, and TikTok.
Yeah, maybe. If it's still there.
I don't know. We
don't know what's going to happen.
We've banked a lot of these episodes. We have no idea what the state of the world is.
A lot of UFOs showing up, a lot of Kang spaceships showing up. Honestly, we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, maybe we need that to happen.
Make mine Marvel.
Make mine Marvel. Oh my god. Oh no, the context is so different now. But anyway, yeah, please follow, like, subscribe, share, and come back for more Kang talk.
That's right. We're going to cover issue 48, and we're going to continue our coverage of Earth's Mightiest Heroes. It's like we are the podcast for Avengers talk right now.
Yeah. Who else is out there? I mean, come on. They're not as good, right?
They're not avenging anything.
They're not Earth's Mightiest anything. Until next time, more issues to come.
Stay tuned.